Hey guys, this is Savannah from earthandwater.co. Today I'm here with Margie Bro, medium, energy healer, flow coach, oral transmitter, community leader in Massachusetts. And we're going to talk a lot about a lot of things. And I want to start with the ancient art of channeling. What can you tell us about that? Because I have okay, again, I'm in Alabama. We don't talk about woo-woo stuff around here. So I've completely had to be self-taught and figure things out along the way on my own with the limited resources that I had. Because, the internet wasn't really a thing until I was almost 20. I mean, it was probably like 17. So anyway, we're hitting the ground running with that. I've recently decided that I think that I channel a little bit through writing
hmm
amongst other things. Sometimes you can get me in the oral flow, but I have neurodivergent problems that makes talking hard sometimes for me. So that one doesn't always flow as well. But tell me what you got going on with all that.
Yeah, that's a great question to start off with. So when I mean the ancient art of channeling, I mean pulling it apart from where in society we have like, oh, you're a medium or a psychic medium. I want to bring it back down to its roots. And so when you think of the ancient art of channeling, you're thinking of channeling and communing with all streams of consciousness, not just formless spirit energy, but like being able to connect in with the crystals, being able to connect in with the earth, being able to connect in with the plants, being able to connect in with the stars and the planets in the sky. So that ancient art of channeling is
Okay.
being able to connect in with all of those streams of consciousness because they all have their own stream of consciousness, and it all comes back into that oneness, that place where we can all connect into. And so that ancient art of channeling is bringing it back to the original oracles, the 33 oracles and the original oracle, which is the earth, being able to connect into the way that they communed with those streams of consciousness, which is through nature, through rituals, through journeying, through standing in the stream of consciousness all of the time and not separating yourself from. So when I mean the ancient art of channeling, I mean breaking it down to work in the laws of the universe, the natural laws. So that's the law of divine oneness, the law of vibration, the law of polarity, the law of perpetual transmutation of energy, the law of correspondence, breaking it down and putting it within those laws and working within it within those laws to be able to connect into all of those streams of consciousness that come back into that web, all of those streams that weave in together. So when you think on a quantum level, when you're thinking of that place of oneness, people don't always understand what that means. And so on a quantum level, is studied in quantum physics, all of our particles, all our atoms, when they originate, they come from one stream of interwoven frequencies of light, of sound, and those particles all come from that place of oneness. So that means we all come from that place. And when energy cannot be created nor destroyed. So all of that energy, when it is no longer in physical form, goes back into that web. So when we are able to know that and operate from that place, when we're channeling and connecting into those streams of consciousness, we know that we always are they're always available because we all come from that. So we can all connect back into that. And so how that comes through for me, and I love that you mentioned that when you're connecting in, it comes in through writing. There's so many different ways that our channeling can come through. We're all mediums. We all are. It's just having the awareness and knowing what does that look like for me. For me, the first thing that came in was scent. I smell things first. So I'll get like for example, I was recently with someone and we were journeying and we were doing some work and I was smelling shoe leather. I'm like, why the heck do I smell shoe leather? I have no idea why I smell shoe leather. You have to ask for more information when the message first comes in. And it turns out that I was connecting in with an ancestor from her family who used to work in a shoe factory. And before I knew that scent was my connect in to ask for more information, I would like start smelling things when we'd be out places or like in my house, and I'd be like to my family, "Do you smell that?" They'd be like, "No, you're crazy." And I was just started to write off those smells. I'm like, "Oh, I guess I'm crazy." But the more I started to develop my own healing gifts and my own awareness around what I have to offer, and going into classes and being able to practice and taking clients, I recognized that that was my first connect in, was the scent. And so I get messages through scent, I get auditory, I get visual, and I get a not an emotion, but like a feeling in my body where like I can feel it in my shoulder, I feel it in my knee, and I just know that's where I'm supposed to be delivering the messages, or that's where you might be holding something, or maybe that's where a trauma happened for the energy that I'm channeling. And so that is there's a lot that goes into that ancient art of channeling and oral transmission, because oral transmission isn't just the way that we speak. Oral transmission is all the ways that we can connect in with the stream of consciousness, speaking in rhythm and balance, but it's also bringing in sound into it too, because sound is a way that we're channeling and putting out our medicine as well. So sound can be playing instruments, but it also can be through singing and mantra and breath work. So there's a lot of different ways in which we can express in different mediums the way that we're channeling. So for you, it comes through writing, it can come through speaking, it can come through making art, it can come through doing, like, I would even consider a comedian someone who is using that medium to channel something. They're delivering a message, right? And so when we're delivering those messages, it's all about staying in that stream of consciousness, no matter which way you are using that mediumship.
I love how you put that because a lot of us think that channeling comes from, spirits. And yes and no, because the oneness thing, it's all the same thing. It's just
Mhm.
different interpretations, different forms of the same thing, but underlying it all is the same energy. And again, figuring out, because I agree, we all we can all do this. We are all capable of these abilities. It's just a matter of figuring out which one's yours. And that is really freaking hard to do, especially in a world it's been so science oriented and shoos away the woo woo and laughs us out of the academic areas. But I love how it's coming together to all be one because it's always been one thing anyway. It's people wanting to touch it and feel it instead of just understand. I've always felt like I had a lot of just innate understanding of things, not people things, society and culture and community and how we've built the world. That didn't make any sense. But like but the emotional, the intuitive, the connecting with animals and the earth and stuff that made complete sense to me, but for some reason didn't to everybody else. And it's because we've shut off this innate ability because science.
But the thing is, and something that I bring into all of my work, is that we have to bring it all back together,
Mhm,
because the mind, body, and spirit is all one. The
mhm,
mystic and the scientist is the same thing. The
mhm,
psychological, the psychic, and the physical are all the same thing.
mhm,
So you can't, like, for me, I love the science behind it, because when people are like, oh, the woo-woo stuff, and I'm like, no, it's actually the science stuff.
mhm. It's all.
It's actually like scientifically proven. It's actually fact.
Mhm,
It seems woo-woo to you because, like you said, our brain, we have had so many limiting beliefs around what our what our innate abilities are, being so disconnected from that ability to harness that power and own that power. And that's because it's not lucrative, right? Keeping people in fear is lucrative because then you can keep them doing what you want.
yeah.
And when people realize they have a lot of power and that they don't need to operate in these systems that are based on the love of power versus the power of love, it's lucrative for them.
I got chills when you said that. It's so true. It's so true.
Because yeah, because we all have these abilities. And the reason why the way the society is run didn't make sense to you is because it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't.
It's not rooted in any logic. It's not rooted in merging that mind, body, spirit. It's driven in fear. It's driven in capitalism. It's driven in power and the love of power and people wanting to have control with that power. It's not where our society is not designed for people to have their own power
Mhm.
and be able to wield it as such. It's not designed for people to have compassion and empathy. It's not designed for us to live in congruence with nature and harmony with nature. We're designed to actually destroy it and use it for our benefit without considering it. And so when we work in those natural laws and we bring it all back into merging it all together, when I'm making choices, I'm considering all living things. And the earth is a living thing, right? Plants are living things. The planets are living things. The stars are living things. They're living things that all connect back into that stream of consciousness. So I'm not 100% perfect because perfection doesn't exist, but I try to live that 80% of the time.
I agree, so do I. And that's a big reason that I started doing all of this is um again, because none of it made sense to me and because none of it does make sense. So when I first started doing things online, my dad one time I was on the my laptop and he came around and he was like, "What are you doing on that thing?" And I said, "Trying to save the world." Of course, that wasn't a very productive conversation we had, but
The
we've
real
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that we've been conditioned to be disconnected to these things. So when we're presented with information that goes against everything we've known, then we get kind of, there's a word for it that I talk about all the time, but I can never think about it when I need to think about it. Cognitive dissonance.
Yes.
Yeah, so we get combative and we start fighting each other, and it's just fear. It's just fear of the unknown and doing things differently. We don't want to be told that we've been doing things wrong our entire lives based on lies that we've been told and the world's been built upon. And it's hard and it's going to take some time to get through it. But I think that we are coming to a better place as a whole. We are breaking down these constructs, and it's that's why everything seems to be falling apart, and that's why, because we're dismantling the system. You have to make a mess to clean a mess. And
Absolutely. And all of these systems that have been put in place have been here for so long.
Mhm.
They're not going to crumble overnight.
Or with
Um, right. And as anyone who's working in this way, it's not going to happen by force either. Like we can't crumble them by force. It has to be a sheer will of the number of us that are becoming aware and awakened to continue to ignite others to be awake, right? That's the only way that the system changes is by changing the people in the system.
Yeah, each one of us has to be stubborn enough to hold on to our values of love and compassion and togetherness and community and doing the hard inner work to be able to hold those values, because it's not easy. It's interacting with people who aren't aware of their own patterns. It's not easy because our like initially, if you haven't done this inner work, you're confronted with these people who are stuck in their patterns of non-helpfulness, we'll call it. um Anger, there's lots of anger arises, and then you lash out, and that's counterproductive again because you can't fight it into something better, just like you can't beat someone into respecting you or doing the right thing or whatever. They're just going to come at you with resentment, and it's just a vicious cycle. So to be able to hold those energies of love, compassion, peace, togetherness, community, all of the things good in the world is not easy.
It is, it's, you have to be disciplined in your practices.
Mhm.
And you have to have that all that self-compassion too, because again, we're not perfect.
Yeah.
We are human. We're not infallible. We have lots of faults. So we have to love ourselves there too and have that compassion because the moment that we start to judge ourselves or get angry at ourselves when we operate in one of those old conditionings that we're still alchemizing and still transforming from, we stay there. instead of being able to come right back, because it's just as easy as coming back. And the people who are doing this work, and anyone who might be listening will know what I mean. Like when we make the decision to come back, it's not like, oh my God, we have to reclimb the mountain. It's like, oh, okay, we're getting right back on the bow. It's no big deal. But you have to make that choice to do it. And it is a choice
Every time. And I don't know if you
every time.
and I don't know if you ever fall into this trap, but a lot of people who and I'm speaking from my own experiences, but I also see it other people dealing with it, is that if you are really committed to these principles of love and light and whatnot, the people who you're going to irritate other people's demons, absolutely. And then they're going to just be waiting and watching for you to slip up and not be in that so that they can jump out and be like, I told you, you thought you're this, you think you're that, and you're not, and you're just like the rest of us, and yada yada, insert all of the adjectives and names. But we're not perfect. It's the thing. We're not perfect. So
We're not. And to even pretend like we are, like you're already not operating in that space if you're pretending you're perfect and that you never have a moment when you're not in that 80%. And so with that, like I really like to explain the law of polarity to people when they get like that, because I used to be in positive projection. That's where I lived, like rainbows and butterflies and unicorns only. I was not, I was going to be in that positive place. Nothing, I would never talk about negative emotions. I would stuff those things down.
toxic
Eventually I would
positivity.
explode. Right. Like I would not ever things because I didn't want to be a burden. And so because I was taught that those things were quote unquote bad, right?
Yep.
And when I learned about the law of polarity, this was like my extreme ignite a moment, because I had taken classes and I was working in the field already. And I was Reiki certified. I was Reiki master teacher. I was doing all of those things. When I learned about, and this the law of polarity is the first law that I really deep dived into. When I learned that the true power is being balanced in the eye of the storm versus trying to be one or the other. Because if you look at an atom, it has to have positive and negative to have charge, right? So, but down to the things that make us up, you have to have positive and negative. It's not just one or the other. And to have true power and to have true balance and harmony and unity in your life, you have to recognize that things are both. And to instead of placing yourself as the things that are going around the eye of the storm, right? Because if you're just in the positive projection, you're going around and around in the storm versus placing yourself in the eye. That's really when you have power.
Yeah.
That's where the atom has charge. And that is like that place of oneness where you come into balance and you're like, nothing's positive and negative. Everything's both. Everything's both. Nothing's light and dark. Nothing's good and bad. Everything is both. There is duality in everything. And coming into an awareness and a balance of that and realizing, homegirl, you do not have to have this customer service, high pitched voice, smile on your face, and act like everything is such all the time. That blew my mind. Because at that point, when I was working in Reiki, I was taught under the schools of thought, and so many people in the space are. You go and you work with a client, you turn your Reiki on. You're this conduit of healing. And then you end the session and you turn your light off and you go into the world. Right. And so with learning about the law of polarity, I was like, I never have to turn it off. I never have to turn it off. I don't have to be in this positive projection place. I can stay in that light all of the time. And then I wanted to learn everything. I was like, I've got so much more to learn. There's so much more here. I want to learn forever. I never want to stop learning about all of this. And, now I teach it. And so I'm still always learning because when you're a teacher, you're also a student, because you're a student to every single scenario, every interaction you're having, everything is teaching you all the time in every moment. And so I always like to tell people that story when I'm working with them, especially if they are extreme in that positive negative projection, because truly the power lies with knowing that there's both, and not being upset when someone who is in that dark place, that heavy place, they call you out when you come there too. You're like, yeah, I'm a human being. Of course I'm gonna have these days too. Of course I am. But guess what? It's just a decision that I'm gonna stay in my power. And my power has both.
Yeah, you have to have that confidence in yourself when people start confusing you because they are. They're going to confuse you. They're going to tell you their perceptions of you, which can never, ever, ever be accurate because no matter your best friend on earth who has, I don't know, lived with you for 12 years can't give you an accurate perception of you because you are the only one that is with you 24/7 around the clock and has been since birth. You're the only one that knows exactly what you've been through and how you took what you took from those experiences. So it's really hard to stand in your power and hold on to your truth when people are coming at you telling you that you're this or that when you don't think that that's true. And that's something that I fell into for a really long time.
And I think that we all do, right? Because we're taught to listen to feedback and be open to criticism and listen to what like what people are telling you. And the thing is you're right. We can take those observations in and we can learn from them, but we don't have to agree that they're true, right? We can use it as a lesson. We don't have to go, you're right, I am this and that and another thing. You'd be like, that's an interesting perspective. I'm going to sit with that and take any lessons that I need and leave the rest. Because it doesn't have to be true just because someone else is saying it.
Yeah.
It's true for them, but doesn't have to be true for you. It doesn't have to be the truth.
And good and bad are just human constructs. Again,
Hmm.
to what you were saying. Everybody wants to hyperfixate on the law of attraction, but they forget that there's 11 more laws that go along with that one.
Right. And this isn't in the universal laws, but like for me, my first intention is first do no harm. I'm working on the law of ahimsa into all those universal laws too. Like first is do no harm. So that's my intention always. The rest falls into place. But you have to have awareness of all those other things. And people do hyperfixate on manifestation, the law of attraction, and they have no idea about any of the other things that go
Yeah.
into that.
Yes.
They don't know about the law of vibration. They don't know about their frequency that they're holding. They don't know that their emotions are just energy, and that matters when you're trying to attract something because you can only attract something at the level that you're at,
Mhm.
right? You can only attract something from the place in which you are vibrating. So if you are in this place of fear and judgment and criticism and hate, devoid of compassion, devoid of joy, devoid of gratitude, right? You're gonna manifest things and attract things from that level. So you could manifest what you're asking for, but it's not going to look like what you actually want because you're manifesting at that level.
Yeah, people win the lottery all the time and then end up right back where they were. If you're not ready for those types of things, you have to. Yeah, okay, I was yesterday I was editing an episode that got to touching on how entrepreneurs, for example, oftentimes work themselves into the ground day in and day out so that they can eventually arrive to a place where they have lots of free time to do whatever they want, to spend with their loved ones. They want to take care of their loved ones. And we think in our more fixated, boxable perspective of how we've created the world that that's the way to go, that you have to meet these achievements and these goals before you're able to have the space and the free time to do what you want. But the truth of the matter is that you can just do what you want first and then formulate things as you go to fit that perspective. So by the time that you reach all these goals, usually, you're so burnt out and frazzled, more or less, really stressed that your relationships have deteriorated. You don't have the free time that you wanted. So you may accumulate all this money because you thought you wanted the material things so that you could spoil your family or whatever. When in fact, you could just in the beginning spend time with your family, nurture those bonds, cultivate the free time and the life that you want, and then make your business work for you.
It's all about your perception, right? It's all
Mhm.
about what your values are in the beginning, right? Because they think that the spending time is what their values are, but how their words, deeds, and actions aren't aligning. It's all about having our words, deeds, and actions align. And so that also matters when we're trying to attract and manifest things too. If you are not having your words, deeds, and actions align, the universe is not going to know what to do with you. Like you're saying you want one thing, but you're acting another way.
Mm-hmm.
So like you're not actually like you're this is what setting as your deed, but you're not even following that deed and you're acting completely opposite from both. So how am I supposed to know what to throw you?
Mm-hmm.
And it really wants to work for you. Like the universe wants to follow, and all of the energy wants to follow the path of least resistance. And and when we operate in those ways without knowing, we're actually creating much more resistance
Mm-hmm.
for that path.
Yeah, you have to make it make sense, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's not going to make sense to the outside world. Like you have to, it just has to make sense for you
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and not be like constricted by other people's perceptions and views. Because at the end of the day, there is only one truth, right? Your perception isn't truth too. Your perception is your perception. And it feels true, but it's not the truth.
yeah. That external validation trap is what a lot of gets a lot of it holds everybody back.
It does because we want to be validated in our experience and we're taught that,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're taught that through competition. We're taught that through, the way that people perceive us and, saying, "Oh, you look good," or "Great job," or "I'm so proud of you," or, all of those things, which is why I try not to tell people I'm proud of them. I try to say, "Are you proud of yourself? How do you feel?" I'm happy for that, right? I'm happy if you're proud of yourself. But until I have a really good relationship, a really strong relationship with someone where I know that they're not seeking my external validation, I won't even say I'm proud of you. I don't even say that to my kids. I say, "Are you proud of yourself? I'm so happy."
That's good. Yeah, I like that perspective as well. I try not to compliment or comment on anything if I can help it. But because I mean, really, it's really none of my business, right? It is all about them and their relationship with them and how they feel about themselves and their life.
Yeah, me being proud of you, like, what does that mean in the long term? I don't want you to be constantly trying to get me to be proud of you, right? I want you to be proud of yourself. And if you're proud of yourself, I'm happy.
Hmm.
That
God,
brings me joy that you're proud of yourself.
if only we could get that concept across to other people.
It's a work in progress, trying. It's an effort.
Sure, sure. We're working on it together,
Just
aren't we?
grabbing my charger here. My computer's about to die.
Oh no, we need that.
Yes, we do. Hold on, I'm just gonna turn my video off for a second. That was rapid. I was like fully charged, so looks like I might need a new battery.
So tell us how people who want to, because they've listened to us and they're like, okay, they said we can do this too. They said I can do it. How do I do it? What's your advice for people getting started? Meditate.
So yeah, I think that everyone's path is gonna look different. So for me, I really enjoy community and classes. So I am either always taking a class with the academy that I have taken a lot of my classes from, or I'm apprenticing in those classes. So I really like to be a part of that place where I'm in a community of other like-minded people who are always holding the mirror to my miracles and also helping anything that I'm trying to attract and manifest is mirrored back in many people. So having that sense of community for me was really important. But not everybody's going to want that or even be their way in.
Or have
So, or have access to, because
because I
as
don't.
you said in the beginning of this conversation, you don't have access to that, at least in the physical.
Yeah.
And so you could join a million
Oh
in
yeah.
one face groups, but it's not ever going to be the same as being in person. And so I absolutely understand that. So it's not something that everyone's going to have access to or they're interested in. And so I love to do research on my own. I think that illuminates a piece in you that allows you to ignite the information in yourself because you're reading it and then you get to go, okay, I can shift the way that I'm operating based on this information. Then I get to observe it and take what works for me. And so it's making you a scientist of your own life. It's making you a scientist to all these things that we're talking about. So read, Find books that resonate with you. Find books that teach you that science. For me, I love The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton. I love The Awakened Brain by Lisa Miller. I love The Healing Power of Sound by Mitchell Gaynor. I love The Hidden Messages in Water by Dr. Emoto. Thing, things that bridge that science and that mystic together. The Whole Elephant Revealed, if you're a person who wants to learn more about natural law by Maria de Veres, incredible book. It really literally breaks down the science behind natural law and the spiritual way in which we operate within that natural law. So if that's your jam, read. You're like, oh, I'm not a great reader. There are so many YouTube videos. There
Oh,
are so there are so many, there's so much information out there. Again, it's finding, you don't want to, go find information from someone who isn't actually doing the work. You want to find the people who are actually doing the work because there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. And knowledge is something I decided I read in a book and now I know it. And I am feeling like an expert because maybe I read a lot on that topic. Having wisdom is practicing the things that you are learning about and reading and having wisdom to back it up. Because when we start to practice these things that we're learning is when it really becomes awakened in our own cells, awakened in our DNA. And then we go further with it and deeper with it and allow more of us to really come out of the layers that we're breaking down and the limiting beliefs that we're releasing and the conditionings and the patterns and the way our neurons are firing start to change because we're becoming more aware of ourselves, who we truly are, and not all that we've been conditioned to be. And that only happens with wisdom and practice. And so if reading's not your jam, find those people that speak to you and have done the work themselves and can illuminate that wisdom in you personally. So I know that like Eckhart Tolle, he has a YouTube channel. Deepak Chopra, he has YouTube channels and he is brilliant. Lisa Miller, who wrote The Awakened Brain, she has YouTube videos out there. She has a podcast. So there are people who hold that wisdom, who share it in more than one way. So you can find it in that way. You can start to do the practices that we talk about, right? And that the more you practice, even if you've never read a book, you start to shift and you start to become more aware because you're getting more in tune with your body.
mhm.
So whether you start to do some breath work or you start to do yoga or you start to do a walking meditation, or maybe you're starting to, hike in the woods, but you're doing it with an intention. You're doing a mindful hike in the woods. The more you do that, the more you're going to become aware and the more you're going to connect in with yourself. So for anybody listening or anybody who wants to know, you just have to start.
Mhm.
In which way resonates with you is which way. So whether it is finding that community and taking classes because you really want the theology behind it all, you want the theory behind what you're doing, or you really like to read, or you really like to listen to a podcast or an audiobook, start there. The rest will unfold because your journey is your journey and your path is your path. Know that anything that we're talking about already lives inside of you. It's already there. If I have access to it and you have access to it, then anyone listening has access to it. It's just about finding what's going to unlock it for them. And so they can do that in so many ways.
Yeah, people really think that you have to subscribe to a whole ideology at like, if you're reading about Buddhism, then you have to stay within the constructs of Buddhism, or if you're reading about Christianity, you have to stay in the constructs of that, or, insert whatever religion, philosophy, belief system, whatever. But that's not true. You can absolutely, and what you should do, I believe, is to learn about a lot of things and then take what resonates with you from them and more or less discard the rest. It's okay if things that resonate with this practice don't resonate with that practice. Because, when I was in my early 20s and I was like, oh, politics is something important I should be interested in because voting's important. Okay, let's change the world into better. And I was trying to figure out what party I was a part of because that's the first step, right? and could not.
Neither. None of them.
Neither and none. Nope, nope, don't resonate 100% with any of them. It's terrible. And people want that black and white. They want that either or. They want that structure. And the truth of the matter is that nothing is black and white. Nothing is either or. Everything's a spectrum. Everything is all of it. And none.
All of it. Everything is all of it and none of it. And I love that you said that. That is so beautiful the way you put it. And to that end, like when I'm practicing with people, I'm using things from all different types of religions.
Mhm.
Sometimes when I'm channeling, I'm like, I don't even know how I knew that. I don't
Yeah.
even know why I knew to say that, right? Because I don't prescribe to any one religion, but I do use things from the Buddhist religion. I use things from Christianity. I use things from ancient Greek mythology. I use things from Hindu religion. I use things from indigenous peoples and Native Americans. Like I use so many different types of information, right? Sometimes I'm talking to Mary Magdalene, but sometimes I'm talking to Ganesh.
Mhm.
Sometimes I'm bringing in Isis, but also sometimes I'm bringing in Laughing Buddha. So there's so many things that you can take wisdom and knowledge from. It doesn't have to be one. And when you're working with so many different types of people, sometimes the energy that you're speaking to needs a specific thing. So when you're really working in those streams, you're going to call in whatever is resonant to that person. And it doesn't always make sense to you, even especially if it's not something you've really worked with.
I agree completely. You mentioned I see you have a book recommendation list that you sent me that I'm
I,
totally going to put into the show notes. The whole elephant, is that why your logo is an elephant?
my that's not why my logo is an elephant. I do really resonate with the book and I do love natural law, but I was in a session. So as a healer and as a person who works in this world of energy medicine, I find it absolutely important to not only be constantly learning and gaining more wisdom myself and going deeper with myself. I also find it incredibly important to have consistent healing sessions.
Mm.
So for myself, I am always getting healings every 4 to 6 weeks. And so I have two mentors that I've worked with. One is the creator of the academy that I have taken most of my classes with, and one is one of the directors of the ancient art of channeling, which is one of the master's programs that you can go through that academy. It's called the Svaha Yoga and Synergy of Sound Academy out of New Bedford, Massachusetts. And when I work with them, sometimes we're working on my own business and what resonates with me. And so I was working with Nikki. She's one of the co-directors of the Ancient Art of Channeling, also owns her own business called Light of 100,000 Suns. And we did a journey to find what really sparks me, what resonates with me. And I really like colors. I always bring the rainbow into my meditations, and so that's where all those rainbow colors come in. I have a lot of like big, exciting, childlike energy. And in the journey, I was like in my full goddess form, riding an elephant on, and it was a prismic elephant, which is why my elephant is prismic. Um, Riding an elephant on the beach. And so that's why I have like that spiral of colors behind the elephant that represents like the waves to me. And so that's how we came up with my logo. And even Prism of Brilliance came through that same download when we were journeying to figure out like how do you want to represent you as you're going forward? Because originally when I started my business, when I was still um, in a different place than I am now. I originally was called Margie the Good Witch because I thought it was a cutesy name,
Mm.
and it was like cute and trendy to be witchy. And where I have so much respect for people who work in those modalities, it doesn't really. I'm not actually a witch, and that doesn't actually resonate with me.
Mm.
But it was cute at the time, and so I was like, "This doesn't work." And I'm attracting people who are asking me to do spells and to manipulate energy,
Yeah.
and that's not really what I want to do. I want people to operate in their free will by giving them the knowledge and the tools, and helping them release from things. But even that work that we're doing, I'm doing a lot of that help, but the work comes on them. So it's allowing them to have that free will to change their lives.
And it can.
So, and it does.
Hmm.
Um, and so that's why we did a whole journey around like, okay, who are you really? Like, what do you really connect with? And how do you really want to represent who you are? Because Margie the Good Witch is not it.
I like it. I like that. I like the logo a lot, and I like the journey that it took you to get there. I also don't resonate with the word witch when it became, because it started becoming mainstream probably like 3, 4-ish or so years ago, and you saw it everywhere. Because if you're into this kind of stuff at all, it popped up. It popped up everywhere, and I was just like, oh, that
Everywhere.
they, it's so cute. That's not me though. And then I started learning about what they were doing, and I was like, oh, yeah, I guess that is what I'm doing too. But it's different in this, it's not different, it's just how you interpret the energy and how it resonates with you. And um, which in and of itself has a lot, I've done content on the word itself and how it was like where it started out and how it was formed throughout history and what it meant originally and how they took it and made it into some demonic figure type thing for their own agendas. And so I use it every now and then because I understand the history of it and because it's an easy way to get my point across sometimes. But I've had people straight attack me for it because, again, where I live, it's always people local. And
Hmm.
um, not even using the word witch, but I've had people attack me locally, of course, always, uh, about yoga and meditation and things that are so gentle. But I've had people tell me that I shouldn't be teaching meditation, especially to my children, because children shouldn't be communing with spirits. I've had people tell me that yoga is not only anti-Christian or something, but like downright demonic or something. I don't know. The misconceptions are wild.
Those are two things I have. This is a first for me.
Yeah.
Yoga being demonic,
Uh-huh.
is a new one. Is
Yeah.
a wild place to be, to have that perception. Um, I only have a
I
facial
agree with
expression for that. I have
that.
no words. I have no words for that. That is a new one.
Yeah, it's hard being where I am sometimes. But yeah, c coming back to what we want it to be and all of that, the inner work is what's important for people to heal as a whole. They come to us most oftentimes because physical ailments or very specific emotional problems that they're trying to overcome. And our nature it's counterintuitive. We section ourselves off into a mind, a body, and a spirit, but like I know, we're all it's a whole. It's a whole. So if you try to attack it from only one direction or the other, then often there's the disconnect that keeps it attached. So I'm hoping that if I just keep talking about it with lots of people, it'll eventually get to who needs to hear. The little tidbits of information are pulled where they're needed, when they're needed, by who they're needed, and hoping to close the
And yeah, and you keep doing that because the show that you're doing right now and the information that you're putting out there, it is reaching the people that need to hear it.
gap.
And it is going to help illuminate others. And you continuing to stand in your own power and your own truth and honoring your wisdom and your knowledge, even when those people are saying those things to you, even if they don't let you know right in that moment, that does shift them too. It does shift them too, whether they own it or not our responsibility, but not giving them the fight they're looking for too. That's a big win, right? Because I know it would be easy to be able to get defensive. It would be easy to go there. But choosing not to, having that choice to stay in our power and not allow them to uproot us, to operate differently than how we are seeking to operate in the world, how we have intended to operate in the world, is a really big commitment to ourselves and that compassion that we're showing them. I don't need to battle you. I'm putting this information out there and you can choose to believe it or not. You can choose. I'm not trying to thought dominate you or make you believe a certain way. I'm just asking you respect me
Hmm.
and the way that I believe. And we can leave it there. I'm not battling you, and it's not a challenge. Here's the information that I know to be true, and you can operate there or not.
Yeah, I'm hoping we're figuring it out as a society, as a culture. It's becoming more prominent. You see less and less trolls all the time, and we're learning that a lot of the trolls are, from troll farms in other countries and whatnot. So that helps.
Well, and a really good awareness to have around those people is, and how I view them is that they're suffering, right?
Yeah.
Because they're not allowed to express so many things, and they're operating in so many conditions and limiting beliefs, and a lot of them don't know that they're suffering, or could even identify what is causing the suffering if they are. And so they would never say it because they just think that's the way it's supposed to be. They
Mhm.
don't even know that they're suffering, or know that they're being controlled by all of these things outside of themselves. And I have a lot of compassion, even if I can sometimes get startled by the things that they might say. There's a lot of compassion around that operating system, because I understand what it means to operate and not the truth of yourself, and not the truth of that energy. And I know that I was suffering when I was there, and I know that the people around me were suffering when they were there. And even when sometimes we go back there, because sometimes we do, because we're not perfect. And for me, compassion is love in action. It's the true liberation of suffering. When we have true compassion, compassion is not suffering with, or like shrinking to come down into that space with them. It's holding all of that love and all of that light and all of that intention, that we are liberating that suffering. And that can start with liberating our own suffering, until we hold so much space that we're liberating the suffering in others. And so when I am hearing those things, or people are operating in those ways, I have a lot of compassion, because I know that they are suffering. Whether or not they know, I know.
They know underneath, but we've been fed so long that normal human dis-ease, normal human sadness is just a thing that is normal. I've read it in books. I've read how like there's been studies and like not recent ones. They're from like 75, 100 years ago plus and whatnot. But up until recently, we thought as a society that human suffering was just normal. We were just depressed. We're depressive people. We're depressive organisms. It's fine. Like you just got to give it.
But and that's so crazy, because emotions are just energy. And so the reason that we're suffering or depressed is because we haven't actually let those emotions flow,
Mhm.
and have their natural course, and honor them, and support and nurture ourselves when we're experiencing the things that might be heavy and dense. Because it's not that heavy and dense emotions aren't going to happen, right? We still get sad, we still get angry, we still get upset, we still get frustrated. It's allowing that emotion to come in, observing what triggers it has brought up in us, what story, it's observing those stories that happen, right? Because the emotion triggers the mind to start going, and the mind wants to be in control, so it starts looping all of these conditions and these patterns and these stories. And it's that conscious, that compassionate observer that can witness those things and say, that's not true, I'm not going there, thank you for the information, I'm just going to allow this to flow away, right? If we're not in our compassionate, conscious observer, if we're not operating there, that emotion that triggers all those stories and those limiting beliefs will immediately go there. And that's when the anxiety comes in. We'll start to operate in all these things as if they're truth. And then we'll stay in that emotion, and
Mhm.
that will weigh us down. We will now become heavy and dense with it, because we didn't just allow it to flow. And so when we come through that compassionate lens, no matter what heavy and dense emotion comes through, I can observe all of those things that are happening, right? I can observe that story. I can observe that trigger. It can give me information. I can thank it for its information. And then I go, but I'm going to let this energy flow, because I'm not attaching anything to those stories. I'm going to take information from them so that I can shift the way that I'm operating or take a lesson from it. And I'm going to transmute this energy. I'm going to transform it into something light, into my power, or offer it back to that place of oneness to be reused and recycled there.
Yeah, you have to really put yourself in that third person perspective rather than the first person experience perspective. You're experiencing it, but you're detached from it also.
Hmm.
And then you can't rush the process. The process is however long the process takes.
Yep.
And but the lucky thing is, the good thing is that once you recognize all of your patterns, you really don't have any extra ones coming in later. Like you just the patterns you have are the patterns you have. And once you identify the patterns that you have, they just repeat themselves over and over and over again. It's not new problems that you're dealing with. So
Correct.
and it may take a month to process it the first couple of times, but then it takes a couple of weeks to process it, and then it only takes a single week, and then you're down to days, and like every time it pops up, you get quicker and quicker at processing it. So it does get
And exactly. And then the more tools that you're using, the easier it is to process it. So, like for me, a typical day looks like I wake up in the morning, I do breathing exercise, I do a quick meditation, just laying in my bed. You can make any space a sacred space. You don't have to have a meditation room or do it on a yoga mat. It can be anywhere.
Mhm.
Before I get out of bed, before I look at my phone, I am doing some breathing. I'm connecting into compassion. I'm connecting into that place of oneness. And I'm doing a meditation, a bioscalar meditation to really ignite that scalar light in my own personal field, putting up my hologram of light and sound around me, rooting before I rise, connecting into the earth, and rising up to the ethers. That's quick. Within 5 minutes, I've done that.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be this really extensive, like I have to spend an hour meditating a day. I have to have an hour to do it. Nope. 5 minutes top, sometimes less than that if my kids have woken me up.
Yep.
So I do that quick 5 minute practice before I go to bed. Every morning I have mantras and affirmations that are written on all of my mirrors. So no matter what mirror I'm looking at, whether it's the mirror in my bedroom while I'm going out or the mirror in my bathroom as I'm brushing my teeth, there's a mantra there for reminders. My 6-year-old and I, every morning, we have a morning intention that we each set. We say it out loud to each other, and then we do our chakra affirmations. He does them with me every day. In the morning, we mantra, we sing, or we dance before we leave the house. Sometimes it's a combination. Sometimes we do all of those things. So before I even left the house, I I've already done so many things, so many practices that are a part of who I am, a part of my routine that are keeping me in that flow, keeping me in that place to be in that third person when those experiences are coming in. So even when those experiences are coming in or those emotions are happening, I'm I'm so prepared. I've prepared myself to be able to process them because of the practices that I'm doing every day.
Yeah, that's where that discipline comes in.
Yep, and discipline's so important. It's so important because again, you can't just take in information and then go, okay, I have so much wisdom. I know so much. It comes in doing those practices and having that discipline in those practices that the wisdom comes in and the truth comes in and being able to really peel back those layers and go deeper with yourself comes in with those practices. Because sometimes something comes out of left field and you weren't and you're like, oh crap, good thing I did my practices today, or I'm not sure I would have handled that so well.
Hmm.
And over time, you see one, again, how you were mentioning how maybe it took a month and now it takes 20 minutes, right? But you get to see that growth over time. You get to see, like, wow, when I first started this journey, it would take me a month to even like come to a place of acceptance
Hmm.
and take accountability. And now I can do it in 2 days, and now I can do it in 5 minutes. And so you always get to recognize that you change over time too. And so that's also something that I always like to talk about with people is like the knowledge that the you that was you 10 minutes ago doesn't have to be the you that shows up 10 minutes from there. Because the moment that we take in new information and a lesson and decide that we're going to operate differently, you're now a new version of yourself. And I think that's really powerful for people because they get so stuck in like, well, this is who I am, and this is how I've always done it, and this is what this person says I am, and that person thinks I am. Who cares about all of that?
Hmm.
Right? If you make a decision to operate differently, Yes, will that be difficult for other people because you're operating differently? Sure. But is it easier for you to now operate differently? Then focus on that. Are you taking in the things that resonate with you and allowing yourself to practice and operate in that way? That's what you should do.
Mhm.
Because we don't need to stay the same. Actually, it's not, think of anything in nature, and that nothing stays exactly the same.
Mhm.
Everything's constantly changing. And we should be the same way, but we don't give ourselves that space or that grace at all.
You're exactly right. Yeah, there's again with the knowledge versus practice, there's things that you're going to uncover about that practice by practicing it that you can't get from books or podcasts or other people because that's your own experience and that's what you learned from it and that's how it affected you. And then a lot of people think that because I tell people all the time, like my family, I tell my husband and my children, you know, each version of you, minute by minute, is completely different. The version you are today has never existed simply by having new interactions day by day with not only other people, but our devices, our pets, our things, and just going outside and interacting in the world. Every little thing brings in new information that changes us. It may be too subtle to notice, but again, you're not being fake by choosing something different today. Whoever you choose to be today, if you're not forcing it and you're just allowing it, I don't know, sometimes I'm forcing exercise. So there's definitely forcing, but you get to choose whoever you want to be today. Choose your character.
And 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 that's a really cool thing to know. Like we are constantly caterpillars transforming into that butterfly. It's a constant evolution. It's a constant change. And so for me that was really powerful because there were people along my journey who was like, "Oh, you know, you didn't used to operate this way or you used to operate in the exact opposite or say the exact opposite." And I was like, "Oh, well, I took in new information. I took in new information and I allowed myself to grow with it." And it used at first I used to feel guilty when people would say those things. I'd be like, "Oh, am I being a hypocrite? Am I like doing something wrong?" No. You're simply taking in new information and allowing yourself to take lessons and process it and then operate differently. There's nothing wrong with that. That's actually what we should be doing. That's growth. That's allowing our mind, body, and spirit to grow through taking in that information.
Fusing together all of these pieces that we've sectioned off ourselves into. That kind of
Hmm.
came out weird, but you got the point.
Yeah, I do. I know exactly what you mean.
We chop ourselves up in an effort to understand, and with all of this, we're just bringing it back together, fusing ourselves back together into our.
Yeah, we're bringing it all back. And so Um, it's a really it's honestly like one of the best choices I ever have made in life. And I'm really glad that I get to have conversations with other people like you who are doing the same thing in their lives and being able to illuminate it for others. That's why I love teaching. That's why I have a radio show that I'm on every Wednesday that I co-host. Like, so I love doing those things because I know that even if only you listen to the show once, I'm helping illuminate and drop those seeds. And those seeds will germinate and grow. It doesn't need to happen it's definitely not going to happen overnight. But I know that every person who comes into contact with me, I'm dropping those seeds of light. Those seeds of awareness are being dropped. And it might take 10 years to grow, it might take 5 months, but either way, I dropped them.
Yeah.
And so that's what I allowed to happen for me, right? By taking these classes and showing up and continuing to taught lessons and intentionally seek out those spaces to learn. I'm allowing all of those seeds to come into me too. And then I sprout and plant them for others.
Yeah. So tell us how to find this radio show and all of your other things and what you have to offer for people.
Yeah, so I have a business called Prism of Brilliance. I do energy for life, flow, and manifestation coaching. So that can be done in person or virtually. I do transformational energy sessions, which is a little different than flow coaching, but really those sessions can look a lot alike depending on what you need in the moment. And then I also do sound and meditation. I also, on the flip side, am really passionate about working in the business world. So I do organizational flow consulting to help businesses come into flow with those systems and really change the systems in which they've been operating. And that comes with doing internal work for the leaders and the managers of those systems. And so I do those sorts of workshops, and I do anything from a 3 month to a 12 month with an organization to help them come into flow as well. People can find me by going to my website, which is prismofbrilliance.biz. They can go to my Instagram or my Facebook, which is just Prism of Brilliance. To find the radio show, it's called Now I Thrive with Armida and Margie. It is a local to Worcester community radio show that we're on. It's called Unity Radio, 97.9 FM, Worcester's Community Connection. All of the past radio shows are housed on their Facebook page. So if you go to Unity Radio 97.9 FM, you'll be able to find them on Facebook. You can find all of the Now I Thrive past shows. But if you want to listen in when the show is happening, it happens Wednesdays at 5 p.m. live. You can actually go to wuty.org and listen to the show live, even if you're not local to Central Massachusetts. So that is a way that you can listen in. All of the shows are recorded and kept. So even if you want to go back and listen to old shows, you can. And then if you want to reach out through my business page, you can do that as well. I also have a flow coaching workbook that's available on Amazon. So if you're interested in any of the things that I've been talking about and you want to start your own journey, but you're not quite ready to like start with a healer, you can you can go on Amazon and look for flow coaching coming into rhythmic reality. So it helps you set intentions. It gives you some of these resources that we've been talking about and breaks it down. It gives you a lot of your own self practice. And so that's available on Amazon if you're looking for something like that.
Awesome. And I'll make sure that I'll try to get all of that linked. Just make sure I get the links and then they'll get the links.
Okay,
And
of course.
we'll have all of that close by so they don't have to go searching and whatnot.
Of course.
Thank you so much for being here. I really, really enjoyed this conversation. I feel like we could go on a lot longer.
We really could. So please, on a personal level, like you have my contact information. So at any time you're like, hey girl, there's some wild stuff going on in Alabama. I just want someone to rattle things off to. Please feel free to reach out. Please feel free to reach out anytime.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for this opportunity to be here and chat with you. It has been a great conversation.
So that's my new best friend. Go follow her because she's obviously wonderful, as we just showed you. She has a lot of resources. I've linked them all in the show notes on the bottom. Especially in the blog post. There's always more in the blog post than there is in the show notes of where you're listening to this, just because of the restrictions and what I'm able to do in the blog post. The blog post gives me like complete control over everything, whereas the systems to which I upload this to restricts things a little bit. So I have limited amount of characters I can work with and limited amount of like images. I can't put images, but I definitely love to do graphics, so they're over there. Yada yada. Patreon, that's a thing. Love you. Talk to you next week. Bye.